Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adnan Iqbal. I welcome all of you. This is our third anatomy class, and in this anatomy class, we are going to discuss about the autonomic nervous system. And in the previous lecture, we have discussed about the division of the nervous system. And in the division of the nervous system, we have discussed about the central nervous system, in which the brain and spinal cord is included, and the peripheral nervous system, in which we have the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. And the cranial nerves are the nerves which are coming out of the brain and going to the periphery, and the spinal nerves are those nerves which are coming out from the spinal cord. So we have 12 pairs of the cranial nerves, and we have 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. So let's talk about the spinal nerves and the spinal cord segments. So you know that 31 spinal nerves are coming out from the right side of the spinal cord, and 31 spinal nerves are coming from the left side of the spinal cord. So we can say that 31 pairs of spinal nerves are being coming out from the spinal cord. Now, what is spinal segment? Uh, the portion or area of the spinal cord from which a single spinal nerve is coming out, that portion or area of the spinal cord is known as the spinal segment. So as 31 spinal nerves are coming out from the spinal cord, so we have 31 spinal segments of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord has 31 spinal segments. The top most area of the spinal cord, this whole area in blue, that area is known as the cervical area. And the nerves, the spinal nerves which are coming out from the cervical area, they are known as the cervical spinal nerves, or simply we can say the cervical nerves. So from the cervical area, 8 spinal nerves are coming out. It means that that cervical area has 8 spinal segments. And we name the cervical nerves from C1 to C8. C1 cervical nerve, C2 cervical nerve, C3 cervical nerves. So from C1 to C8, these are all are the cervical nerves which are coming out from the cervical cord segment. Similarly, this whole pink area is the thoracic area or the thoracic cord. And in the thoracic area, we have 12 spinal segments. It means that from the thoracic area, 12 spinal nerves are being coming out, and the spinal nerves which are coming out from the thoracic area, they are known as the thoracic spinal nerves or thoracic nerves, which are named from T1 to T12. Similarly, this area is known as the lumbar area, and this lumbar area has 5 spinal segments. It means that 5 spinal nerves are being coming out, and these spinal nerves are known as the lumbar spinal nerves or lumbar nerves. Similarly, below the lumbar cord, we have the sacral cord or the sacral area, and this sacral area has same 5 spinal segments. So it means 5 sacral spinal nerves are being coming out from the sacral area. And the last one is the coccygeal cord or the coccygeal area, which has only one segment and only one spinal nerve, therefore is coming out from the coccygeal cord. So it means that 31 spinal nerves are being coming out from 31 spinal segments of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord finishes up to that mark, and below that mark we have the spinal nerve branches, and these spinal nerve branches which are coming out from the spinal cord, these branches are known as the chorda equina because they look like the horse tail. So the horse tail in Latin is known as the chorda equina. And you know that the spinal cord resides or present in the vertebral column, and this is the vertebral canal in which the spinal cord is being residing or present. And uh, just as we name the spinal cord segments, we have also named the vertebral column segment, and the naming of the vertebral column is same as of the spinal cord. It has the same level as of the spinal cord. So the vertebral column has the same level or has the same segment from area C1 to T12 as of the spinal cord. Uh, but below the thoracic area, from L1 to coccygeal, the area or segments between the spinal cord and the vertebral column become different. For example, the area of the vertical column, the lumbar area of the vertical column uh, is this much, whereas the lumbar area of the spinal cord is smaller as compared to the lumbar area of the vertebral column, which is larger as compared to the spinal cord. Similarly, this is the sacral area of the vertebral column, which is larger as compared to the sacral area of the spinal cord, which is smaller, and they are lying at the different positions. So what I'm trying to say is that the vertebral column segments or area is same of the spinal cord from the area of C1 to T12. As you can see, this is the cervical area, and this cervical area of the vertebral column and this cervical area of the spinal cord, they are at the same level. And thoracic area of the vertebral column and the thoracic area of the spinal cord, they are also at the same level. But from the lumbar area, things become different. This whole area is the lumbar area of the vertebral column, and this is the lumbar area of the spinal cord. So they are both lying at the different positions, and their area is also being different. Lumbar area of the vertebral column is larger as compared to the lumbar area of the spinal cord. So why I'm giving so much emphasis on this point? The reason is, if you place this spinal cord, this whole area of the spinal cord, resides or present in the vertebral canal, in the vertebral column. So what will happen? The spinal cord, as you know, that the spinal cord ends up to that mark, finishes up to that mark. So this is the mark at which the main spinal cord will end. This is the area of L1 and L2. So the spinal cord will end in between the L1 and L2 vertebral column, and below the L2 the only spinal cord branches will be there. So what is the significance of this? The significance of this is that if you have to give the injection to the spinal cord, or if you have to take the cerebrospinal fluid from the spinal cord, the injection should be given below the L2 area, because below the L2 area there are only the spinal branches. So if you give the injection, there is very much less chance in damaging the spinal cord, as above the L2 there must be a spinal cord. So if you give the injection above the L2 area, there is a very high chance of damaging the spinal cord by the injection. So that would result in the paralysis of the patient. So the injection in the spinal cord must be given below the L2 area, because that could have only the branches of the spinal nerve. So the peripheral nervous system is being divided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And you know that the somatic nervous system is being associated with the voluntary control of your body movements, whereas the autonomic nervous system is the part of the peripheral nervous system which regulates the involuntary processes of your body, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiration and digestion. You cannot control your heart rate. Your heart will contract at its own uh, rate. You cannot control it, and you cannot control your digestion. It will digest your food at its own will, and you cannot control your blood pressure. The blood pressure will be controlled by its own will. So these are all the things which are not under your control, so therefore we are calling it as the autonomic nervous system. Whereas the somatic nervous system is the part of the peripheral nervous system, which you can control. For example, you can raise your hands, or you can walk by your skeletal muscles, or you can raise your hand by your skeletal muscles at your own command. So these are the somatic nervous system. And again, the autonomic nervous system is being further divided into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And in the stress, you need the sympathy. So from the sympathy, the sympathetic comes. So therefore, in the stress, your sympathetic nervous system will be active, and which will prepare you for the fight or the flight, so you can cope up the stress. Similarly, the parasympathetic nervous system is a part of the autonomic nervous system, which is also being said as the rest and digest. So, the parasympathetic nervous system will give you the energy, and that energy is being utilized by the sympathetic nervous system to prepare you for the fight or the flight. And the enteric nervous system is also a part of the autonomic nervous system, which usually is not discussed uh, much. So the enteric nervous system is the autonomic nervous system which resides in your GI tract. So the spinal nerves which are coming out from the thoracic and the lumbar region of the spinal cord, these spinal nerves are controlling the sympathetic nervous system. So the spinal nerves from T1 to L2, these spinal nerves control the sympathetic nervous system. So we can also say the sympathetic nervous system is being controlled by the thoracolumbar region of the spinal cord. Similarly, the parasympathetic nervous system is being controlled by the cranial nerves which are coming out from the brain and the sacral region of the spinal cord. So we can say that the parasympathetic nervous system is being controlled by the craniosacral region of the spinal cord. And you know that we have 12 cranial nerves, and the cranial nerve number 3 is known as the oculomotor nerve, cranial number 7 is known as the facial nerve, cranial number 9 is known as the glossopharyngeal nerve, and cranial number 10 is known as the vagus nerve. So among the cranial nerves, cranial number 3, 7, 9 and 10 are controlling the parasympathetic nervous system, and among the sacral nerve, sacral S2 and S4 nerves are controlling the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is being controlled by the spinal nerves of the thoracolumbar region of the spinal cord, and the parasympathetic nervous system is being controlled by the craniosacral region, spinal nerves of the spinal cord. So your nervous system is being controlled by the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. And sensory neurons are those neurons which carry signal from the periphery to the central nervous system, and the motor neurons are those neurons which carry signal from the central nervous system to the periphery to control the function of the particular organ or the muscle. And we also say the sensory neurons as the afferent neuron and the motor neuron as the efferent neuron. Or we can say that why we are calling sensory neuron as the afferent neuron, because the afferent, the A of the afferent is arrive. So we can say that the sensory neuron arrives at the central nervous system from the periphery, so therefore we are calling it as the afferent. A for arrive at the central nervous system, and the motor is the efferent. So the motor neuron is exiting from the central nervous system to the periphery. So E for exit of the efferent. So the sensory neuron arrives at the central nervous system and the motor neuron exits from the central nervous system. Therefore, we are calling it sensory neuron as an afferent neuron and motor as the efferent. So we have discussed the difference between the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system is controlling your voluntary muscles like the skeletal muscles, whereas the autonomic nervous system is controlling your involuntary muscles which are not under your control like the smooth muscles or the cardiac muscles. Beside having these differences, there are also other differences and between the autonomic and the somatic nervous system. In the autonomic nervous system, we have the autonomic ganglia, whereas in the somatic nervous system, we do not have any autonomic ganglia. And we have discussed that the ganglion of the nervous system is being divided into the sensory ganglia and the autonomic ganglia, and the autonomic ganglia is being further divided into the sympathetic ganglia and the parasympathetic ganglia. So right now we are discussing the sympathetic nervous system. So in the sympathetic nervous system, we have the sympathetic ganglia. Now you know that in the ganglion we have many neuronal cell bodies. So in the sympathetic ganglia we have many neuronal cell bodies, and because of the presence of this autonomic sympathetic ganglia, two types of neurons comes. One is known as the preganglionic neuron and one is known as the postganglionic neurons. Now what really happens in the autonomic nervous system, that you know that in the spinal cord we have the gray matter and the white matter, and the gray matter has the combination of many neuronal cell bodies. Now from the gray matter of the spinal cord, the axons from these neuronal cell bodies will come out and they synapse at the level of the sympathetic ganglia with the neuronal cell bodies which are being there in the ganglia. Now what is the preganglionic neuron? Preganglionic neuron is a neuron which is coming into the sympathetic ganglia and synapse, and the postganglionic neuron is a neuron which exits out from the sympathetic ganglia after the synapse. So the preganglionic neuron is coming from the spinal cord and is synapsing into the sympathetic ganglia, and after the synapse another neuron is coming out from the sympathetic ganglia which is directly innervating into the organs, and that neuron is known as the postganglionic neuron. Whereas in the case of the somatic nervous system, we do not have any autonomic ganglia, so therefore we do not have any preganglionic and the postganglionic neuron. But in the case of the autonomic and the somatic nervous system, we do have the sensory or the dorsal root ganglia. You know why we need the sympathetic ganglia in the autonomic nervous system, and why we do not need any sympathetic autonomic ganglia in the somatic nervous system? Because in the case of the somatic nervous system, if you have to raise your hand, you only have to raise your hand, you don't have to do any other further action, so you don't need any diffuse action. In the somatic nervous system, you do not need any diffuse action, so therefore you do not need any autonomic ganglia. But in the case of the autonomic nervous system, you need the diffuse action. For example, what do you mean by diffuse action? For example, if a dog is chasing you, your heart rate will go up, your respiration goes fast, your blood flow to the GIT will become slow. So these all actions are occurring at the same time, and so these all actions which are occurring at the same time, these are known as the diffuse action. The action which you needed in simultaneously together. So this won't be possible. This won't be possible if there is no any autonomic ganglia. So the autonomic ganglia make it possible for the diffuse action which you need in the autonomic nervous system, whereas in the somatic nervous system you don't need any diffuse action.
This is the spinal cord, also known as spinal medulla. The spinal cord lies in the vertebral canal, and it is about 45 centimeters in length or 18 inches in length. It is a continuation of the medulla oblongata and extends from the level of foramen magnum, which corresponds to upper border of the atlas vertebra, up to the lower border of the first lumbar vertebra. So the lower end of the spinal cord, it is at the level of lower border of L1 vertebra in adults. Now here we can see the dura mater, which has been opened up, and the spinal cord can be seen, which is ending here in the lower part. This lower tapering part of spinal cord, is known as conus medullaris. So this is the conus medullaris, and this fibrous filamentous sheath, which is attached to the apex of the conus medullaris from here, which is a continuation of the pia mater. This is known as filum terminale. So this is the filum terminale. This is the apex of conus medullaris. This is the lower tapering end of spinal cord. And this continuation of pia mater, which is surrounded by the subarachnoid space within the dural sac. This is the filum terminale internum, or the internal part of filum terminale. After second sacral vertebra, the pia mater continues surrounded by the dural sheath up to the posterior surface of the coccyx vertebra. So that part is known as filum terminale externum. So there are two parts of filum terminale. One is filum terminale internum from the level of lower border of L1 up to S2 vertebra, where subarachnoid space ends. From S2 vertebra up to the coccyx vertebra, there is just pia mater surrounded by dural sheath but no subarachnoid space. So that is known as filum terminale externum. So this is one of the modification of the pia mater, that is filum terminale. Surrounding filum terminale, we can see this bunch of spinal nerve roots occupying the lower part of the vertebral canal. This bunch of spinal nerve roots, it resembles like tail of a horse, and it is known as cauda equina. The cauda equina is because of the oblique downward course of the lower lumbar, sacral and coccygeal nerve roots, which have to come out from their respective intervertebral foramina, so that in the lower part of the vertebral canal we can see bunch of these lower lumbar, sacral and coccygeal nerve roots, which resemble like a tail of a horse, and that is known as cauda equina. So in the lower end of the spinal cord, we can see three important features. One is the conus medullaris, this is the filum terminale, and surrounding there are bunch of spinal nerve roots, which is cauda equina. Now there is another modification of the pia mater, which we can see on each side of the spinal cord. These structures, this thickening of the pia mater on each side, this is known as ligamentum denticulatum. There are such 21 pairs of triangular tooth-like processes, and these are present between the ventral nerve root and the dorsal nerve roots. As we can see here, these are the ventral nerve roots. These are the ventral nerve roots, and behind are the dorsal nerve roots. Between them we can see this thickening of pia mater on each side. This is the ligamentum denticulatum. These ligamenta denticulata, such 21 pairs, this helps suspend the spinal cord in the midline and prevent injury to the spinal cord during excessive movements of the neck or during jumping. The third modification of the pia mater we can see is the thickening of the pia mater along the anterior median fissure, this white glistening band which is present in the anterior median fissure, this is known as linea splendens. So this is the linea splendens. The pia mater which goes into the anterior median fissure can be seen as a glistening white band throughout the anterior median fissure. This is known as a linea splendens, which is the third modification of the pia mater. Along with the linea splendens, we can see a bluish blood vessel running in the anterior median fissure. So this blood vessel is the anterior spinal artery. So in this fissure, anterior median fissure, we can see two structures. One is the white glistening band, that is a linea splendens, and running along with it there is an anterior spinal artery. So this is the anterior surface of the spinal cord. Posteriorly, we can see on the posterior surface of the spinal cord, this is the posterior median sulcus, and this is the posterolateral sulcus, where we can see the rootlets of the posterior nerve root attached on each side. Between the posterior median sulcus and posterolateral sulcus, we can see two tracts, thin longitudinal tracts. The medial one is fasciculus gracilis and the lateral one will be fasciculus cuneatus. Also on each side along the posterolateral sulcus, we can see the posterior spinal artery. So this is the location of the posterior spinal artery, one on each side along the posterolateral sulcus. So this is the posterior surface. When we take a transverse section of the spinal cord, we can clearly see the inner H-shaped grey matter. So this is the H-shaped grey matter, in which the broader part, this part, will be the ventral horn, and the slender part will be the dorsal horn. So this is anterior and this is the posterior surface. So H-shaped, which is actually looking whitish in color, this is the H-shaped or butterfly shaped grey matter, and surrounding it is the white matter of the spinal cord. So these are the important features of the spinal cord.